Goombas are a common, basic enemy in Mario Maker and in many Nintendo games. Today I'm going to give a guide on how Goombas work and how we can maybe use them in our levels to empower our level design. Ready? Object Fix-Up, Goomba Edition. Welcome to Object Fix-Up, the low production quality series where I talk about stuff. Today's topic is the Goomba. First I'll go over the main properties of Goombas and then talk about how we can use them in our levels effectively. Goombas are a very basic enemy with basic movement options. So this Goomba will walk back and forth, turning around when it hits walls, and walk off ledges. Its main variant, the Goombrat, does not walk off ledges and instead patrols a platform. Goombas will also turn around when they walk into other enemies. One of the other main variants of a Goomba is a Paragoomba, i.e. a winged Goomba. It walks around and regularly hops every so often, and it will also walk off ledges. A winged Goombrat, unlike a regular Goombrat, doesn't continue all the way to the edge of a platform. Instead, it patrols a very clearly defined area, as I've shown there, with the 4 brick blocks and the track squares. Mario can stomp to kill a Goomba or a Goombrat. However, with a winged variant, they can take one stomp and just lose their wings before returning to be a regular Goomba or Goombrat. Goombas are vulnerable to all types of damage. They'll be slain by Mario's fireballs, pow block, spike ball, a moving shell, or being crushed, just to name a few options. As basic enemies, Goombas can be put into all sorts of spawners: Bill Blasters, blocks, Lakitu, pipe. Goombas can also be placed into stacks, tracks, clouds, clown cars, and claws. The last main variant of a Goomba is when it's large, which actually has some substantially different gameplay relative to other large enemies in the game. When Mario stomps a large Goombrat or a large Goomba, it will split into 2 enemies. If that Goomba is carrying a key, you'll only get credit for it for getting the key or for getting the clear condition when all pieces of the big Goomba or Goombrat have been slain. While large Goombas and their variants effectively have multiple points of health from stomping, they can be instantly killed through a combination of Mario's fireballs, through sliding with shells. They also instantly die to spin jump and ground pound. In general, the only way to split a large Goomba into 2 is by actually stomping on it with Mario. Goombas behave very differently in water, in night airship or night ground themes, where instead of walking around like they normally will on ground, they will float around and swim. Goombrats will swim around seemingly at random. Goombas will hover in a very close position to where they originally spawned, up and down just a little bit, and they'll stay there until they see Mario and Mario comes near. They'll basically guard that area and then swim towards Mario. Winged Goombas have a very similar behavior. However, with wings, they will cover a much larger distance in a single stroke. The large variants have also very similar behavior to their small counterparts. Just like on ground, Mario can stomp on Goombas and remove their wings or split them into multiple pieces. Goombas have a very similar behavior in 3D World. However, they have an additional behavior where if they see Mario in a cone in front of them, then they'll accelerate and start running forward. That is, unless Mario is wearing their skin. The Goomba Mask Goomba interaction isn't that useful in ground themes because Goombas only accelerate a little bit on ground. However, it is much more useful in underwater, where Goombas actually respond to Mario's presence quite a bit when he doesn't have a Goomba mask. In Super Mario World, Goombas are replaced with Galoombas and Goombas, where if Mario stomps on them, instead of dying, they'll become overturned and give an option for Mario to grab them and throw them around like items. Galoombas and Goombas can be flipped around automatically in similar ways to how you'd flip around a shell, and this can give Mario an easy access to a weapon. Mario can throw around this Goomba to either activate switches or kill enemies. However, an overturned Goomba or Galoomba doesn't really activate switches from the side. Overturned Goombas can also be kicked into enemies to do damage. Or the Goomba will automatically be spent to hit an enemy if Mario walks into it while holding. Given enough time, an overturned Galoomba or Goombud will flip itself back up. While Mario cannot normally bounce on an overturned Goombud or Galoomba, he can quickly spin jump on it. And the large variants can be kicked around, but they cannot be grabbed by Mario. While there are more details to know about Goombas, here I'm only covering the basics. Now that we know what Goombas do in general, let's see how we can use them in our levels. Goombas have a very basic movement behavior that is mimicked by many enemies in Mario Maker. Here you can see that most enemies actually go at the exact same speed. Goomba, Spiny, Buzzy, Koopa, it's very common. So in a way, you could say that if you understand Goombas, well, a Spiny is very similar to a Goomba that you can't jump on. Buzzy and Koopa are very similar to a Goomba that give you a shell after you kill it. Bomb is like a Goomba that gives you a bomb. Dry Bones is like a Goombrat that revives itself, etc. So overall, it's very important to understand the very base behavior of a Goomba so that you can understand a little bit more about how all the other enemies in Mario Maker work. While Goombas and Goombrats may seem very similar to each other, the distinction of walking off ledges is a very important one. Here you can see that if I put a Goomba on this platform, it just walks off to its own death. This happens a lot in levels where if you put down a Goomba on a platform, if Mario just waits long enough, or the Goomba just has enough time to get moving before Mario really gets to it, then the Goomba will no longer be guarding the place where you put it. In contrast, because a Goombrat turns around at ledges, it's very reliable to keep zoning and guarding a specific region. So no matter if Mario waits or not, depending on how fast Mario gets there, it doesn't matter. The Goombrat is still going to be patrolling that one area. For this reason, Goombas work very well with pipe spawners, so that they can maintain a consistent threat around an area, even if they do walk off the ledges. While Goombas walking off ledges makes them much less generically splashable into levels than Goombrats, their ability to conform to terrain is actually very useful. So like here you can see that when these Goombas are spawning from a pipe, depending on the switch state, when the terrain changes, so does the path of the Goombas. So you can make it so that the area that they protect changes. If Goombas are so similar in movement to so many other enemies, what makes Goombas unique? Why would I ever pick a Goomba over something else? Well, Goombas have a couple of things going for them that makes them very unique and powerful. First, Goombas and Goombrats don't leave anything behind when they're killed. Unlike a Koopa, where let's say we're doing a Kaizo level or something, now you have to take into account what happens if Mario gets the shell, then he gets confused about what the shell could be for, or finds a way to cheese the level with the shell, etc, etc. With a Goombrat or a Goomba, you don't have anything to deal with because when Mario stomps on it, it's gone. There's nothing left. Another thing that makes Goombas unique is that they are vulnerable to everything. To fireballs, to shells, everything. This includes being stomped by Mario, which is important because that means that Mario always has a way to deal with a Goomba. This is very useful for traditional levels or levels with freestyle platforming, because it means that Mario has a lot of options to deal with this Goomba. So here, let's say this Goombrat. How many ways does Mario have of dealing with it? Well, he could throw a Koopa shell at it, or he could bonk it from below, or he could jump straight onto it. We can further expand this to a formation, where if you have many Goombas in a row, you can kick a shell straight onto them, or you have a more generic response where you could stomp each of them individually, if you so please. Ironically, the fact that they are vulnerable to everything is one of their biggest strengths. So, the fact that you can stomp on them, throw shells at them, pow them, throw Mecha Koopas, etc., this gives you a lot of options for how Mario might be able to deal with that Goomba. And so they're very easily splashable into traditional style levels. As a side note, Goombas are really good with SMB2 Mario because they have a very basic movement behavior that makes them very easy to mount, and they regain their basic movement behavior immediately after being thrown by SMB2 Mario, which is very useful for both Kaizo and traditional levels. In Super Mario World, Goombas and Galoombas are really good as weapons to take care of enemies that Mario would otherwise have a lot of problems dealing with. While you can use Koopa shells for a similar purpose, they also come spinning back and are a hazard for Mario himself, whereas a Goombud or a Galoomba just stay still after they've been thrown. This is also useful in Kaizo levels, as throwing Goombuds can make it really easy for you to set up an enemy to spin jump off of. You can compare this to a shell trick like a surf, where shells are going to keep moving and then Mario has to time his jump to hit the moving shell. Whereas for a Goomba, because it stays still, you can set up a bounce off a stationary target. Large Galoombas and Goombas serve a similar purpose, the main difference being that Mario only really has the option to kick them around and not throw them. In underwater levels, Goombas are extremely useful for guarding a little area against Mario, where Mario will have to usually dodge around the Goomba or find some way to be able to bonk it in order to get through safely. So enough of theory, let's look at some practical examples. In this Kaizo level, you can very clearly see the use of Goombas to platform in a very simple way. As each Goomba is very cleanly consumed, leaving nothing behind, it allows this Kaizo level to just continue with a very clean pace without worrying about whatever might be left behind when the Goombas get killed. This speedrun level that I made uses a variety of large Goombas to enforce that Mario hits a wide variety of different obstacles while large. In Frank's delivery service, I used an array of Goombas and Goombrats coming from pipes or not to make platforming for SMB2 Mario. You can even move around Goombrats using winged munchers like this. This traditional level that I made provides various sets of Goombas in formation to give opportunities for Mario to use the shells that he acquires from the Koopas. In this night ground theme level, I dot the area with various Goombas to defend different areas of these platforms, to give Mario a little bit more of an interesting time moving around them. In this SMB2 level that I made, you take a Goombrat from one place to another to make ground so that you can enter a pipe. In this garbage level, I placed a giant Paragoomba here in the night ground theme to dissuade people from checking out this question mark block, which actually contains a P-switch, which is absolutely mandatory to beating the level. Oops, there goes the P-switch. Here I made a Don't Look Left level, where Mario can use these Goombas as weapons to throw at other enemies. I also used Goombas in this cute little cooking level, where you go around grabbing Goombas and you throw them into this little pot mechanism, where they'll walk down to a detector that is powered by a seesaw. I used Goombas in this old music level, both for the piano sound that they make and for some basic platforming. In this boss rush level, I used a giant Paragoomba in a stack to serve as a final boss. For this boss, there are multiple ways to deal with it. You can stomp on it and take care of all the children. More clever players will find an easier way to deal with the Goomba boss by simply outright killing it with a ground pound or a spin jump. That's all I have for you today, guys. Hopefully this guide helps give you some inspiration and some ideas of how to use Goombas in your own levels. With that, I'll see you around, guys. Later!